right, welcome to the June 2016 Houston Clutter Coaching Meetup group. I'm Gayle Goddard, the Clutter Fairy. Say hi, everybody. Hi. I just want you to know there's an audience here. I'm not just, talking to myself. So tonight we're going to talk about thinking outside the box, decluttering your last move or the next one, which we've done. We're in the Nature Discovery Center tonight, so thanks to them for letting us use this great space. We're a little crowded in here because the classroom is set up for education classes for this week, so sorry about that. I know it's a little hot and crowded. I want to introduce Ed. Say hi, Ed.
Hi.
He's the web guru slash camera guy slash meetup guy. You're right, yeah, all that stuff, right? He's the man, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so I have a whole lot of clients right now who are moving, and you know what a race that is to get to the end, right? Depending on how organized you are, you may or may not be prepared for the move when you get started, right? And when the moving truck pulls up, you may still be throwing things in boxes. By the time the mover shows up, you're in trouble, right? And you run around, most people start grabbing the shopping bags, right? And throwing things in the shopping bag and throwing them in the car. I remember when I was in college, this is a very embarrassing tale because my dad was in the business. He was a corporate sales guy for Beacon's Moving and Storage. And so when I had to move from one house to another while I was in college, of course my dad sent his company to come move his daughter. And I was dressed when they showed up, but I was not completed in my packing, and I was in big trouble. Because they load the truck in a certain way based on the furniture and the boxes you have and stuff, and I mucked with their system. And when we got to the other end and they offloaded it all, he was like, if you weren't Bill's daughter, we would have not taken this move. Like, yeah, sorry. So even if you're super organized, that was a long time ago. I don't do moves that way anymore, thankfully, because I make my living helping people do some of them. If you show up, and even if you're super organized, you're still going to be running around the house going, oh yeah, I forgot that cable, and oh look, we didn't take this hardware down, and oh, we forgot the thing on the wall, and you end up with bags of stuff that get thrown in the car, and the moving truck goes to the next place, and they offload, and you're just standing there going, please God, go home. You can't wait for the movers to be done, right? And they leave, and you fling yourself on the bed that is not made yet, and you say, thank God it's over. Except it's not really over, right? You still have to unpack, and you got to go to work tomorrow. So you go about the business of, I got to make it so that I can eat food. I need to be able to get dressed in the morning. I need to get sheets on the bed. You do the stuff that you have to do so that you can get your life sort of back in gear again, post-move. And the move and all of its horror quickly fades into the background, right? It's like it's in the rearview mirror, and you sort of go, la, 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 la. Not thinking about that anymore. I myself moved in 2015, and I had to do that 10 weeks after my mother passed away. And needless to say, I was not at my best. Vast understatement that I was not at my best in that moment. And so the movers came, and I unpacked, And then 10 weeks after that, I had to go and empty my mother's house. And 2 weeks after that, here came the second moving truck to my house with my portion of my mother's stuff. And so it's like, I couldn't believe I'm doing boxes again. It's like, oh, again. Mm-hmm. So in my closet, in my house, the organizer is bearing all. I have about 10 boxes in a closet that are sitting there that I'm ignoring currently. And then I have a collection of photographs, which my sister stashed into the moving truck without my knowledge, by the way, of containers, a whole bunch of containers of her photographs. And she thought, oh, I'll just let Gayle do with those. And she stuck them in the moving truck. And so I have those parked in my office. And it's a whole project of I have to go through and make keep-toss decisions about the photos, and it's waiting for my attention. So I've done a little bit of it, but I have not completed the project, and I'm kind of over it. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. You get into that process of the move, you get into, I've run out of steam, I have nothing left to give, and there's always 5% of the boxes that never quite get unpacked, right? And so depending on, for me, I've gotten them out of the way, right? Like I know they're in the corner of the office, they're in a closet that I don't go into, a spare closet. And so they're not in the way of the house. I can have people over. It's not a problem for me. But they sort of, because I'm an organizer for a living, they're sort of going, you haven't unpacked the boxes. You haven't unpacked the boxes. It's barking at me, right? And I know everybody has some version of that. Some people just sort of become blind to it, right? And the boxes end up along the wall, or they end up in the corner of the room, or they end up in a closet like mine, and then they sort of become part of the landscape, right? You think of it as a piece of immovable furniture or a fixture in the house. Oh my God, it's so hot in here. Okay. It's June and it's really, really hot, and my apologies that you cannot suffer with me. Oh man, okay. Those boxes that are in my closet are mostly decorative things that I didn't need to function. They weren't things that I needed to go to work or get back on track. I don't need them to cook with. There are things that are to make the house pretty, which is the last thing that I have to do. And I'm gonna, have to process them. And the part of this, the reason for this topic is to give me my own advice to follow so I can make that stuff go away, right? So how do we get past these last few boxes and bags a year after the move? That's what we're going to talk about today. And like I said, I'm going to take my own advice. So I've talked about the leftovers from moving and from inheriting things. So what else creates stashes in the corner of the house? Denise from France. Hi, Denise. She reminded me of a really big category, which is retirement. Oh, yeah. What do you do when you retire, right? You get to the last day of the retirement, and you go through your office and you start packing up things that you gotta have. So you pull the personal stuff out, and you pull out some business files that maybe are your work product that you're really proud of, right? And those go in the box. And then maybe you pull out some industry stuff that you think you're gonna need, right? Like, I've been doing this for 40 years or 25 years or 10 years, and so surely I'm gonna need these manuals at home when I'm not working. But that's how we process the transition, right? That's how we cope with the fact that we were doing this job and it was every part of our life, and now we're not going to do it. We pack up a little subset from the office and it goes home. If you're really lucky, you get 2 or 3 of those retirement boxes. If you're a university professor, you probably end up with 50 of them, and they all have books in them, right? Those boxes go home and get parked somewhere because you're going to deal with it later. Except later never comes because you're retired, and whoever wants to look at them again, right? The other type is from a project or an event. So I have a client who I just cleared out 4 boxes in her bedroom that had been there for 5 years. They were the boxes from her daughter's wedding. And the wedding took place, and then mom was on a venue breakdown, right? Because somebody's got to clean up. The bride got on the plane and left town in the middle of the reception, right? She went on her honeymoon. So the mom had to break down the venue. So home came all these boxes of, here was 2 boxes of table centerpieces that were mason jars with sand and shells and a candle. And they put them all in boxes and took them home. And then there was the box of fans because it was an outdoor wedding. Why don't I have those today? And there was like 50 of those fans, right, in a box because they were new and they were still useful. So those went in a box. They went into the bedroom. Makes perfect sense. And then there was the file box, the really big file box of all of the wedding planning and preparation. Here's the contracts. Here's the location research. Here's all the notes from the caterer, blah, 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 right? Every bride creates this massive amount of paper for the wedding. Then, of course, the day after the wedding, it's all useless. The event has taken place, right? But she was sentimental about it, and she was in charge of breaking it down, and so it all went in boxes, and it all went into her bedroom for 5 years, right? So it clearly, those 4 boxes were this tower right here, and no bedroom is so huge that it can have 4 boxes sitting there as an extra piece of furniture, right? And there was things, the husband would throw the clothes on top of the boxes. I mean, it was just another piece of furniture. So she was like, well, I think we can get rid of that stuff. Good, let's go for it. And we're pulling it all out, and I'm like, yes, I know that your daughter was really, really clever, and her table piece that was so wonderful, and she bought the jars, and she bought the sand, and she bought the shells, and she made it. It was all lovely, was wonderful. But you don't really need 50 of them to remind you of how cute it was, right? So we broke all that down. And I'm taking the fans to the retreat, and got through all that paperwork, and it almost all went in the trash. Like there was 2 or 3 pieces of paper that she thought was, oh, this is a cool, you know, I want to keep the contract. Well, okay. I want to keep an example of the invitation. Every wedding has 150 invitations left over, and no one can bring themselves to throw them away. It's like, really? You're not sending this invitation ever again. Really?
Graduations too.
Graduations, right? That's a perfect one, exactly. But that's an example of, it's a project, it's an event, it has a timeline, it has a deadline. You get to the end, and the project happens, ta-da! And then afterwards, it is all not important anymore, right? Yes, some of the things still have use, but they're never going to be used for your wedding again, right? And we had this conversation that was very interesting, like the little centerpieces and the little fans, surely some other bride would want to use them. It's like, would you have taken somebody's leftover theme for your wedding when it was your turn? No. No bride wants to take somebody's leftovers, even if it's all beautiful and useful. So we had to find an alternate use, and I took all those mason jars off to Texas Art Asylum. You would have to take it off to some school, some place that has a whole lot of tables that need topping, basically. But that is an example of, it's a project, it's an event. It feels really important when you get to the end because you've been racing, you know, a wedding, a big retirement party. You know, there's a lot of time that goes into planning it and all this work that you do. And you go racing to that deadline with all these things carrying on your back of all the stuff that you've been using to make it happen. And then the day after, it's like it suddenly becomes useless. And then it goes into a corner and becomes furniture. And we don't want to do that anymore, right? Right. Okay. So I've given you some examples of post-move, post-transition, post-event, ways that the stashes get created. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do about it. And I'm saying again, I'm going to take my own advice. Here we go. Stop ignoring the stash and bring it into the light, metaphorically speaking, by which I mean you have to notice that it's there again and stop treating it as if it's furniture. We get sort of accustomed to the things in the house and where they are, and we stop seeing them. You get blinders on, you don't notice anymore. It's time to notice it again, and that will help you get annoyed by it, right? And then you can make some progress. Schedule an appointment with yourself to deal with it. I just scheduled an appointment with an accountant because apparently I cannot do QuickBooks without supervision. So I am going to have to go sit in front of the accountant and do the QuickBooks so that I am making myself do it for an hour and he's there to answer my questions. Because the fact that I used to be able to do accounting for a living apparently counts for nothing now. My point being, if you don't make an appointment with yourself, like you make an appointment to go to the dentist, and you have to go to the dentist when you tell the dentist you're going to show up, most of the time you do it, right? You should make an appointment with yourself and say, I'm going to deal with it for an hour on this day, and try to make some headway into the boxes. Now clearly, you don't want to sit down. I'm not going to try to do 10 boxes all in one sitting. I will shoot myself. So let's just do one at a time, right? If you think of the boxes as problems, one of the things that happens is people tell me I'm like, so what's this pile over here? Oh, that's the leftovers from the move, or that's the leftovers from the wedding, right? So why is it still here? Oh, it's just, there's a whole lot in there and it's just going to be such a hassle. And you have in your mind this tape that it's going to be a really hard job and it's going to be a whole lot of problems when you open it up, right? Like you don't know what to do with the stuff anyway, and so if you open it, then you're kind of committed to try to figuring out what to do, but you don't know what to do, right? So instead, think of it as, I'm going to only open one box of problems, and I'm going to make my to-do list to solve the problems in that box. So maybe that is, I got to make a trip to Goodwill with some stuff. I got to take some shredding to the shredder. I got to donate. I got to take things to resale. I got to go give this book back to my sister. Whatever it is. Don't think that you have to solve all the problems in that project pile at once. Just try to accomplish the to-do items in that one box. And truthfully, they age in place, right? It's been sitting there boxed up for a year or 2 years or 5 years. when it comes back out again, it's not going to be nearly as potent as it was when it went in, and it's going to be easier to go through it. A lot of times people open the boxes and they sort of sit with me and go, wow, this isn't that hard. I don't know what I've been dreading for all this time. Like, we make it worse for ourselves just by the way that we look at it, right? Be ruthless about transition and events leftovers. The retirement, I changed my job, I got divorced. Be ruthless about that stuff, because it is really the past version of yourself that isn't really necessary anymore, right? The mother of the bride was never going to need those decorations. And no, she was never going to find another bride that wanted her daughter's leftovers. And so it was just time to let it go, right? Facing up to that collection a year later, 5 years later, it's a whole lot easier. When you open the box and slash the box and go, ugh, and then you're going to look in and go, oh, it's not that bad. It won't be that bad. When we opened the one box, it was all fans. I was like, well, that's easy. We've got to figure out what to do one thing with a fan, and then we're done, right? That was they went in a sack. It went in my car. It was done. It took 30 seconds for me to get that box empty, and she was sort of sitting there going, oh, okay. Like, this is a super fix. We can fix this in a hurry. When we got to the mason jars with the sand, we had to talk about it a little bit because she was real proud of it, and she was real proud of her daughter for making it happen. And it's like, okay, so can you keep 2 or 1 instead of 50? And I can donate the rest? Wouldn't that be okay? Well, you know, that was okay. Like, that let her keep the memory. And so we got rid of 2 big boxes. Of course, they were heavier. I had to haul them out to the car and with a little longer, but it was an easy fix. We had one conversation about the contents. We took 2 boxes out of the house. We found a little, we started a wedding keepsake container, and we put the 2 jars in it. And then the 1 copy of the invitation, the 1 contract, she, you know, the little bit of paperwork she wanted to save. And it ended up being a box this big, instead of, you know, 4 big boxes, right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you have those 50 mason jars filled with sand and everything. So where I would get hung up would be like, I'd feel like, so I had to put all the sand in one place, you know, and then I would have to gather all the shells that were, you know. So did you just put them all in a box and take them somewhere?
I did.
They were, okay.
I left them as they were.
I would have gotten caught up in the minutia of like
sorting it out.
Sure, it was sorted. Yeah.
So this is why you donate things, because you can donate the work away as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like Texas Art Asylum may want to use the jars as they are. And if they pass them through into the teacher sale area, they may want to use them as they are, or they have people that get paid to sort all the stuff out. So they're let them sort it. If they want to pour all the sand in a bag and have a bag of sand, rock on. Okay, but I was not doing that, right? And so whatever. But that's the thing. It's like you don't have to dial it back to its original state. You just have to make sure that there's not something important to you in the mix, right? It was obvious. They were all laid out in segmented things. I could tell there was only mason jars in there. They had lids. So I wasn't going to, you know, hit the brakes and end up with sand on my head while I was driving it away. But it was one decision about a keepsake and one decision about it was okay for me to take the rest. And then those 2 boxes were done. Now what took longer was the file box with all the paperwork, because we had to go through everything. Trash, shred, trash, shred, trash, shred, keepsake. And you know, every mother wants to keep 10 copies of the wedding invitation because surely that's better. No, it's not. It's just more paper you have to store. Whatever your initial response is, pause and cut it in half. If you want to keep 20, say, no, Gayle won't let me, try 10. If you want to keep 5, say, no, Gayle won't let me, how about 2? I know that you have an emotional response when I work with clients and say that to people. They're always like, only 2? Okay, so sit with the panic for a minute and ask yourself, other than finding these super, super cool because they're about my life and my family, what am I ever going to do with these things except look at them? So I can look at 2 just as easy as I can look at 10, right? So that's why I'm saying filter, filter. And we got down to a box of various little pieces of the wedding, but one little box that's like a shoebox size versus 4 moving boxes of shrapnel from the wedding was a vast improvement, and gave her husband back part of his side of the room that he hadn't seen for a long time. I'm just saying.
So
Okay.
if they keep 2 wedding invitations, is one of them going in the fallout shelter? Is that the idea? One's in the files.
One's going in the time capsule.
One goes
right?
to the safe deposit box at the bank.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And part of the way that you can tell yourself that it's okay to do this, because after you decide that it's okay, you really want to keep 5, then I want you to pause again. So you're going to say, I want to keep 20. I'm going to say, no, keep 5. You're going to say, okay, 5. And then you're going to pause again, and I'm going to say, so what's going to happen to these after you're gone? And you're going to go, my daughter's going to throw them away. I rest my case. Right? If you're saving it for posterity, you better be asking the posterity what they think about it. Because you may be doing a whole lot of work for people that have no interest in what you have. And it's not because they're being mean or nasty. It's because they didn't live your life. They don't have your memories, right? They have their own memories in their own life. So even though you shared a household, you guys each have your own set of memories about what's important. And most parents think that they know what their kids are going to think is really important, and they're never right. It's always what they remember about the kid being 3, not what the 3-year-old remembers about being 3, right? They always come up and say, you know, Mom, I really remember that teddy bear, and they'll be like, I thought you hated that teddy bear. That was my favorite thing. You will be surprised what your kids want. It's hardly ever what you think it's going to be, and you should always ask. It's just a method to say, I want to keep 20, Gayle talked me into 5, I could really keep 2 because my daughter's going to throw them away. I'm just saying. Okay, remember that your emotions, you're facing emotions here called change is hard, right? Every time one of these things happens and comes to an end, it's representing a change. The wedding took place and now the daughter's gone. The retirement happened and now you're not going to your office anymore. You're moving and now you're living in a different neighborhood. Maybe you got divorced and you had to move and now you're living somewhere else and you're not married. Whatever happened, it was some kind of emotion that is attached to the movement, and you always have an emotional response to, this is change is hard, right? So remember that, and remember that you're attaching all of the emotion that you had in the moment, like when the second moving truck pulled up to my house, and I was thinking, oh my God, I have to unpack again. I just unpacked. But the truth is, it was not the same amount. It wasn't the same kind of stuff. And it was still really close to my mother's death. So it was a little, the emotion was fresher. But most of the time, when you're looking at these packages in the house that are stashed, it's been a while. It had been 5 years since the wedding. So she hadn't interacted with that stuff for a long time, right? The daughter's been married and living with her husband all this time somewhere else. They have the transition has happened. And you've had plenty of time to get used to it, is what I'm saying, right? It's been 2 years since she retired. Denise was telling us on the Meetup board that she went and dealt with she has a bunch of retirement stuff she has to deal with. And that was why she wanted to listen to the topic. That's why she reminded me about it. But it's that kind of thing. Once you've been retired for a long time, what felt really, really important the day that you left your job, not so important 5 years later when you've been golfing all day for 5 years, or going on retreats, or traveling, or whatever, having fun, or taking naps in the middle every day. That retirement stuff is so not as important as you thought it was when you walked out the door. You've absorbed the change. You've gotten used to your new life, and when you go and touch those boxes, it's not going to be as hard as you think. If you can just kind of make yourself open them and look, you'll be like, oh, what was I thinking? I don't need that, and you'll just start throwing. I don't know what it is that we love our work life, and we feel usually by the time you retire, you've reached the peak of your training, education, influence, money, all those things, right? And you feel really identified with that life. And you let go of it, and you have to find a new rhythm. But when you do, you look back and go, why did I think I'd want to still be looking at those manuals about fill in the blank, right? It's so not important anymore. And it's the most fun for me to unpack retirement boxes with people, because they're always like, I don't care about this anymore, I don't care about this anymore, I don't have to call those people, I don't care about those clients, let's throw that Rolodex out. They're just throwing stuff everywhere. And it's awesome. Yes?
That's a question. With so many people having to go back to work after they retire, what's a reasonable amount of time to hang on to that stuff before you let it go?
So I'm going to say not hardly any time. Because if you go back to it, you're not going to go back to the same company necessarily. You're going to go back and be using their contacts, their manuals, their proprietary whatever the hell. And the industry stuff is still good. Like now we're living in this age that all this industry stuff is online. All the National Association of Professional Organizer stuff, it's all online. If I want to take a class, it's a webinar. If I tell a seminar, I'm looking up things and it's all on the website. So unlike when we were younger and there was no such thing as the computer in the workplace, they were born when I was coming out of college. So I remember that the first time the computer showed up at the desk, we've had that conversation, right? But now all of those workplaces are built around you can get it on the computer. So they probably don't want depending on how big the corporation is, you're not talking to the same customers. You might have some contacts, but yeah. Even so, I would think a slim representative sample of stuff that you think is proprietary to you, work product that you produced. You're never going to have to show somebody work that you did in another company. You may think that you want to follow that model in a new job of something that you did in an old job. So the only person that's really ever going to see it is you. But it's just like any other job. They want to provide the tools for you to succeed. They want you to do it their way, and they're going to give you what you need, right? So it's no different, really. You may want to keep your contacts. But most retired people are like, thank God I don't have to call those people anymore. You get over it. And a lot of times people come out of retirement and they do something completely different, right? You're like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to work really hard. I just want to be semi-retired and, limp my way through a second career, right? Because I'm old and this is hard. I don't want to work that hard. That's the whole point of retiring, right? So you can take it easy. So, I mean, without knowing what your job is and seeing the pile that you're talking about, my basic advice is a slice, maybe. Right? Okay. Did I finish that conversation? Oh. Whatever emotion you feel about the transition is going to have faded when you get back to the boxes, is what I'm saying. So don't assume your initial response, which is, oh God, what a pain this is going to be to get back in these boxes. Once you open them, you'll realize that emotion has faded. I can move on. This will be fast. Okay? Okay, who has questions? Anybody? I find a lot of, dig the boxes out of the well. And it's funny when I do assessments, this is when I find them, because I'll sort of I think I'll talk about it as a walk and talk. I go in somebody's house and walk for an hour, and I walk around, and here's a pile of boxes, and I say, so what's in there? And then there's always this look on people's faces like, oh, that's the leftover from the, so why is it still here? Because I don't want to deal with it. It makes me crazy. Yes, ma'am.
Any advice on emotional, I don't know what you would call it, where you can't like your children's stuff? My son's 29. He could care less about his schoolwork or his accomplishments or certificates. But my mom's still in my head going, you should save this for in case he wants it when he's older.
So how many of you guys have boys that have ever wanted it when they were older? Right? Okay, let me just say, in the game of sentimentality about schoolwork and little kid stuff, boys skew on the no side, right? Girls are a little bit, a little bit more sentimental, and I'm speaking in complete generalities at this point, but boys tend to skew a little bit to no. And sometimes their wives are sentimental and their wives want to see this stuff. But truly, if you've been saving a whole bunch of stuff for them, you can still get away. What am I going to tell them, you guys? You can get away with a representative sample, right? You can go through the box of years 1, 2, and 3, and you can get down to 5 pieces of paper that are really cute, right? Some moms get super sentimental because they're watching their kids draw on the piece of paper with a pen. And they're coloring in the coloring book, and it's like, oh, but he colored it. Yeah, but it's not his artwork. It's just some crayon, right? There's always a best representative piece that is very unique to your son, right? That's going to be specifically his personality, his interest, his work, and the other 95% of it can go away. So the trick is to take everything that you think is about, do it by grade if you want. Here's everything from grade 1, and I have 150 pieces of paper here. Yeah, I can probably thin that down, right? And you can keep go through and compare them all at the same time and say, these 5 are really the best ones. They're the coolest ones. And if I get these really cool ones, the rest of them fade by comparison and are not as much fun. And you can get the jazz of, look at my first grader's little artwork from the really good pieces. Every teacher, you have to know this, it's every elementary school teacher's job to send home as much paper as humanly possible every year. That is their job, right? And they have to color their way through the entire year, right? So there's always some craft project that comes home, right? So my mother saved 1 for me. And it came to me in my 30s, and it was something that I had glued popcorn on and then temper painted, and it was not surviving well. And I laughed about it and I threw it away. That's the bottom line. She did save me, but she saved me a little collection. She didn't send me a big. But a lot of moms, they create the drawer where the kids' stuff is going to get stashed. And then the whole closet fills up with 12 years of schoolwork for 3 kids. And then, and then it's this monster pile that you have to unpack. There's no way, if you died tomorrow, that whole thing is going in the trash. Because they're going to be grieving and freaking out and having to deal with all that paper, and it's going to be so overwhelming to them. It's much easier for the kid to get 5 pieces of paper to look at. Like, they can absorb and cope with 5 pieces of paper. They cannot absorb 5 boxes. They will just take it out of your garage and put it in their garage, and that will be the end of it. They will never appreciate it or look at it or think about it. So if you can think of it as distilling fine wine, right? Or liquor. You're pulling the representative pieces out to the very small little part that's the perfectness, and you're going to give him that little package, which he will then stash in a room, and it will move with him, and then his wife will find it, and she'll think it's cute. Okay?
Macaroni doesn't last either.
No. The 3D stuff is really hard. The better thing with the 3D stuff is to take a picture and throw the, food that the ants are going to find later out. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm kind of stepping back to the work-related stuff. I was thinking about and I are both graphic designers. We used to always get all our images were on CDs, and we had a big book to go through to find them. And I mean, just in the short period of time, we don't do that anymore.
Right.
Go straight to the online, get them online,
download it. You never see a printed copy of it, right?
Those CDs are still sitting there in my bookcase, and no one would want them at this point, because that's not how you do the work. So some things just technology just
fades them away, right?
Yeah,
turns them useless.
Trash.
Yes, you can still get the images off the CD, but who would ever spend the time to do that? No one, right? When you can search images instead, yeah, that's the thing. It's one of those. Yes, ma'am.
What if there are things that really have value?
So pick me an example.
Monetary value, like a tea set, a silver tea set.
Okay, so here's the thing about silver these days.
That's,
No one decorates with that anymore. It's old school, right? And high maintenance. He's right. It's very high maintenance. So you can offer it for sale, but so is everybody else. And it's not really selling because people don't want them. Sometimes they get bought and cut up for art. Like trays get cut up with, saws and end up in earrings, and they end up in mixed media, and they melt them and do things to them. Sometimes it becomes source material. And there are people who love Victorian stuff and they love that look and they decorate that way, but it's a ever shrinking population. So you won't make a whole lot of money selling it unless it's absolutely fabulous and collectible. And the population that's going to buy it has a vast choice of tea sets on the market to buy from. So will you get rich? No. Will you get the money back that your mother paid for it 80 years ago? No. There's, some people, if it's really actually sterling, they might melt it down for the value. And then later in life, maybe this will become more collectible. But that the antiques and collectible market, it ebbs and flows. What's become popular today, Beanie Babies were all the rage, and then they weren't. And people spent all that money on Beanie Babies, and then they ended up with a bunch of little stuffed animals that weren't worth anything at the end. Our tastes change constantly, and if you can hit the market at the time when there's a whole bunch of people that are suddenly wanting tea sets on their tables, you can make some money. But otherwise, no. And here's the thing: now we're back to the sale conversation, right? When you try to sell stuff, it requires a lot of your time and effort. If you're not a store, you can't expect to get a retail value for it. When you go to a resale store, they're in business to sell your stuff, give you some money, and make some money. So you're going to get a portion of it. It's going to be a wholesale value because it's not new, right? That money that you outlaid when you first bought it is hardly ever coming back to you, except for a very small collection of your belongings, because the market is right in this moment that you'll be able to get it back, right? So you have to really want to get money out of it, and you have to really be willing to commit to, I'm going to do the steps it takes to go to the resale store on the right day with the right form and in the right sticker, and it's prepared correctly and it's been clean and following all their rules. And if you have that kind of time, awesome. I'm guessing that guy doesn't, because he works all day and he's still got his work clothes on to come here. So he didn't have a lot of spare time to be, working out how to get it down to the resale store, right? It's one of those things that if you're retired and you have a bunch of time and you want to put the effort in and you're not going to get paid for your time, cool. People do garage sales, people do yard sales, you make money, but it's a lot of effort. So you have to decide, am I of an age where I want to be hot and sweaty to make money or not? I'll just tell you, no, for me, that's a no, right? But I do take things to resale shop. It's probably 0.005% of my household that goes to resale, right? It's the slightest little, important, valuable things that I have that I make the effort to turn into cash. And it's never going to be the bulk solution for you. It's never going to be how you get rid of a whole bunch of stuff. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'll just tell you an experience. My mother was out of town, and right before I came back to Houston, I took her best stuff to a resale shop. Never heard from them again. So anybody's in that position, just think about that.
Yeah, you want to do one
They
that's.
know you're out of town.
You got to work with somebody that's reputable. Somebody has
you're not gonna
experience.
really know that if you're out of town. Another thing is, I've got my original set of silver when I got married. It's never been out of the plastic. Any idea where I could sell? I know.
So
We aren't all eBay.
ask me again, and I'll talk to you about local stuff, because then we're getting into a conversation about local places that the video doesn't care about. But yes, I've got some options. I'll give you some options.
Okay.
Who else is dying of heat stroke?
It's worth it to listen to you.
Thank you, Lois. It's okay. So you know you can talk about something else besides unpacking these boxes, right?
Also, cookbook. Is there any reason to keep cookbooks anymore? Or is that a stupid?
Well, no. Cookbooks are a slice of books that people collect, and people that are into cooking like to read. I don't understand that, but my roommate does that. She'll sit with a cookbook and flip through the cookbook and read it like it's a book. And I'm like, what? But she loves it, and she's a cook. So, you know, she thinks it's fun, and she, you know, gets in. Yeah, see, you do it. The people that like to cook find reading cookbooks entertaining. I would fall asleep. Right?
I go to bed, and instead of taking a novel, I take my cookbooks.
Well, there you go. See? But like any book, you can collect too many, and at some point you have to thin the herd, and, you know, off they go to half price where other people can collect them. Basically.
A recipe is just a special kind of story.
Right? Says the cook.
Delicious.
Whoever had their hand up. Wendy.
Story.
Well, I think you sort of answered the question, but I know when I was working, I had like an extra set of books and supplies and all that in my desk. And so, heavens, you know, I paid money for it, and I'm sure I'll use it eventually. And so it's sitting under the piano bench.
Never been opened, right? 4 years.
No, I went through and I like half of it.
Well,
got
that's
rid
good.
of. But then I've got, you know, the books that surely somebody could use. Who would that be? You know, and it's like you're saying, the time and effort. It's like just take them to half price and
Get them out of there, right? I mean, that's the trade-off that you make all the time, right?
Well, half-price books got cookbooks and all kinds of.
They'll take any, yeah, absolutely.
How much do they give you for it?
Well, they don't pay the same amount for any book. The books are ranked based on their own database of supply and demand. So the $25 Michael Crichton newest book that he sold 8 million of, and everybody paid hardback price for it. Everybody reads them, and then they go to have price with it. So then the 8 million books come in to have price. So there's a whole lot of supply and not a whole lot of demand because all the people that really wanted to read it already bought the hardback. So, you know, then you don't get a whole lot of money for it because there's not a whole lot of demand. Now, you may have books that go in that are low print, low production, a lot of interest. So they rank their books and pay based on what their database reflects of the supply and demand of the books. And they're paying you wholesale because they got to sell it half price and make money and stay in business. So you're not going to get rich off of it, but you're going to put your books back in front of other people that like to read. So it's a right population of people that might want to take the book home. Yes.
I've sold a half price. It's you'll get a few dollars. They'll take anything off your hands, but it's really bad, they'll just redonate it to a library. And if you have a bunch of books 10 years old or so in fairly good condition, you might get $20 or so total.
10 years, 20, 30, 40.
Well, you know, I've gone sometimes and come back with $40, but it's always it's a total crapshoot what you're going to get. You never know. And I'm sure that the demand for the books changes in every moment too. So it's a way for you to take books and put them in front of other people that like books and for them to give you a little bit of money for the effort. Sometimes I've gone in with 2 huge boxes for a client and come out with $3. You know, you never know.
Well, it depends on how much you spend while you're there.
Well, exactly. But you know, I figure this, if you bring in 50 books and you go out with 2, you're ahead. All right? That's a good thing. The supplies, let me come back to her question about the supplies. So you've been filtering through them a couple of times, right? And donating them away. And, now, do you think, if they're 4 years old, do you think you can, claim that place back from the piano bench and let it go?
I can look at them again with new eyes.
Right? Think about it differently. I mean, we don't need the same kind of office supplies that we used to, right? You just need a little, although we all love our office supplies and we think they're fun, surely we need a 37 highlighters because they're so cool, right? And they dry out. But there's no point in housing 37 highlighters when you can go to the Office Depot when you run out and buy another one, right? So why not get those supplies in circulation to somebody that can use them right now, and then you can go shopping for the fun later and get a new highlighter, right? I mean, sometimes I think we forget what it's like to run out of stuff. Like, you should have that experience, right? The thrill of running out of a pencil and having to go buy a pencil. Awesome, right? I do that with like body wash and toothpaste. Sure, I could go to Costco and come home with 27 tubes, but then I never get to go to Costco again. So why not come home with 2 tubes, and then I'll actually run out and I'll get to go shopping again, right? I guess it's the idea of, I had a roommate a long time ago who felt like she had to have toilet paper and toothpaste against the apocalypse. And those 2 things, for her, we had this long conversation about it one time, and she finally said, if I have enough toilet paper and toothpaste, then I don't feel like I'm poor. So it was an emotional statement for her that meant she was flush enough to have a lot of toilet paper and toothpaste. Now clearly there's no basis in reality about that, right? That was just her emotional trigger. And yes, the toothpaste is going to get used. Yes, the toilet paper, there's 2 women in the house, the toilet paper was definitely going to get used. So it wasn't like it was never going to get used, but we had to house a lot of toilet paper, right? So you can keep a huge stash against the apocalypse, but you're surrendering space. And yeah, nobody wants to make extra trips to the store, but you know you're going anyway. So let the toilet paper run out.
Something that you've done previously that I think of periodically is putting a timeline on things. Like, say, if you go to the store and there's a bottle of 300 pills or 200 pills, whatever, and they're having a sale, you buy one, get one, or whatever, and you go, oh wow, you know, because I'm saving.
I'm going to buy 6 of these.
Right, but then you think, how many years worth is this?
Exactly.
And what's it going to be like in
Right.
4 years?
Right, and you're going to be throwing it out. That's a perfect example. You go to the store, and here's the big pack of ibuprofen. And unless you really have something wrong, you are not taking 12 ibuprofen a day, right? And you go and buy on sale and the coupons, and oh, I can have more ibuprofen, and you come home with 8 bottles, and it's like 9 years of pills.
I can't use up one bottle of ibuprofen.
I know, right? I'm like, it takes me 3 years to get through a bottle
I take
of
one
60.
maybe twice a year.
Right? So doing that math is really important. The one that I do about the shampoo, the body wash,
Yeah.
like everybody likes the scented body wash. Well, you buy a regular size bottle, not the travel size, but a regular size bottle from Bath and Body Works, and it takes me 3 months to use it. So when I go in the store and they're having it on sale, and if I buy 2 bottles, I get a 3rd bottle, and there's 17 cents that I like, and you come home with 20 bottles. Well, that's like 6 years of mouthwash. That means you're not going back to the store for 6 years. That's no fun. I want to go back to the store. So I only buy small ones, and I only buy a few. And then they run out, and I get to go buy some more, right? You do have to think about how much you're equipping yourself for when you shop. It's not like when you buy the meat and it's going to die, right? It's not like you buy enough meat to shove in the freezer and eventually you eat your way out of it, or the hurricane comes and you have to throw it all out. That other non-kitchen stuff goes into your cabinet and it never comes out again until it's expired, or it's coagulated, or it's turned into goo and you wouldn't use it anyway, and then you throw it away. Well, why do that? Why spend the money, get the hassle of having to find some place to put it, and then having to go through the hassle of throwing it out later and kicking yourself? Shop less, buy less. That's a better sale than I bought 37 on sale and now I have to find some place to put them, and then I have to throw them out later because they're too toxic, right? Yes, sir.
My problem is books, and it used to be a social thing with a friend of mine. We'd go into book stop and walk out with a huge stack of books. And so, of course, they take up a lot of space.
Right.
But what I started doing is if there's a specific book that I need, I call ahead and I have them hold it at the desk. That way I don't get tempted going through the bookshelves.
That's awesome. That is a very adaptive solution. I
Anyway,
like
you ever
it.
hear him getting your butts at the library?
Right? That is a great thing to do. Exactly. So that whole point is, don't be distracted by all the rest of the stuff at the store, because you already know you love books. I totally do it too. If you're a book person, you love books. Standing in a room full of books is like, whoa, this is awesome, right? What a great idea to say, hold me this book, I'm gonna race in and race out. And even if you race out and make a left turn on the way, you're still not going through the whole store. That's great. That's a great adaptation. I like it. Anybody else? Okay, we're about time, so I'm gonna say thank you. I need to say one more thing. Hi to the group in Alaska who is now gonna study the videos because they don't have any organizers in Alaska. So I got contacted by somebody who said, what a great idea, we'll just sit and watch your videos once a week. Yay, thank you so much. Bye.